Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Daily Wolves. It's me, your host, Will, and today I'm not joined by Chris. However, I'm joined by our latest recruit here. You know, a late signing on a free transfer. Nathan joins us at the Daily Wolves team. Nathan, hello. How are we?
I'm very well, thank you, Will. Glad to be a part here. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, I can be a little bit of good news and not a Debbie Downer on how we started this season. So
yeah,
hope to bring some good energy.
As long as you're more positive than me, I think that'll make for a pleasant change. And so, yeah, guys, what I'd like to do is, Nathan, I'm putting you under the spotlight. Going to ask you a little series of questions just for the listeners to get a bit of an idea about you and your thoughts and opinions and how you view things as a Wolves fan. So I'm going to ask the classic one, which is, how did you become a Wolves fan in the first place? Because, like myself, I don't hear a Black Country accent.
Yeah, so my accent's kind of been washed away through where I've lived, really. Both my parents are from Wolverhampton. They're kind of born and bred over there. But as they say, they kind of got out once they got into their working lives. And I actually grew up in Brussels in Belgium. So I did speak English at home, but kind of went to school in French and in a different language. So that meant that my English just kind of stuck to this international broad accent that you probably won't be able to nail down to a specific place. But hopefully there are twinges of Wolverhampton-esque phrases in there.
I feel like that move from Wolverhampton to Brussels could be a whole podcast on its own. I mean,
long story.
Yeah, I did not expect that as part of the answer. So, who was the manager then when you either started supporting Wolves or went to your first game? Because I imagine that it's quite a hard commute from Brussels.
Yeah, it's not just down the road really, but right when I moved over there, that would have been 2000 I was only 18 months or whatever, so you're really testing my Wolves history here straight away. But I mean, the first manager that I remember going to watch was Mick McCarthy, which was probably the first memory was 2008, I want to say. Maybe in 2009, I remember us getting battered by City at home. I think it was 3-0 or something. That's my first memory, and it not being a necessarily positive experience. And so, I would try and go back and watch as many games in person sort of during the holidays. So extended family is from Wolves, and that's kind of the place we'd always go back to during the holidays, really. So that was when I'd get to see games. So always around kind of your Christmas times and summer fixtures. But yeah, it was a Christmas fixture, and we got battered 3-0 by City, and it was kind of their start of their revolution. So that's my first sort of memory, which there's been positive ones since. So
I think it's a good job that Chris isn't here listening in or joining us for today's episode, because I have a feeling we'd be making him feel rather quite old by us both saying that our first manager that we remember is Mick McCarthy, because that's the same as me. And this is a big one, in my opinion. It's a big one. It's who is your favourite ever Wolves player?
Honestly, the one that I can relate to and I love the most is Dave Edwards. It's a genuinely weird one, and I have debates with my mates about it all the time. But I just think he was a bog standard championship player who made the absolute most of a very limited ability. And I like to think, in my humble opinion, that I want to reflect that in what I do.
Yeah.
But obviously,
I like it.
I love Ruben Neves, and I love watching all these amazing players that we've had in the recent years. But I do remember, Dave Edwards glancing header against Leeds. All them late goals, run into the box, arriving late. I mean, what a legend that.
Yeah,
it's him for me, really.
Yeah, you know what? That is an answer that I've got a lot of time for. He sometimes sits a few rows down from me at the Molineux, and I remember the first time I saw him, he just walked past a few rows in front, and I was there. I was watching with my dad, and I clocked him. And I just went. I just turned. I just looked. I looked at my dad, and he just sort of nodded as if to say, "Yep, it's Dave Edwards down
Yeah,
down
he
there."
knows who he
I
is.
could. Yeah, no, I couldn't. I didn't manage to get a word in with him. But it's an answer that I've got a lot of time for. And the other name you mentioned there, prior to you joining GSPN, um, and for the listeners who've listened to a fair few episodes, whenever Ruben Neves' name crops up, I do then go into a depression for the rest of the episode.
Yeah, it brought good memories, and I think hopefully Andre can be the new one. He's got a long range goal in him somewhere, maybe.
We cannot replace him. We cannot replace. I honestly, for the answer, he's definitely the answer for me. Just because as well. I mean, the listeners will already know this. But from growing up in Birmingham, a Wolves fan,
Yeah,
you know, that's surrounded by Albion, Villa, and Blues. It's not easy. So when you've done the hard yards as a season ticket holder in League One, and you know you've been a down and out, and to have someone, I wouldn't say someone, it's not as if it was just him, but I very much see him as the poster boy for the whole revolution that we had a few seasons back in the Championship and into Europe, and just I just love him. I think one of my saddest memories is when I saw the tweet that he was leaving. I was at the pub. I was at the pub with my mates. And have you ever seen, the Jamie Carragher, Thierry Henry thing? When I think it's the Liverpool manager gets sacked.
Oh, and his hand goes on his
Henry,
other leg.
Yeah. My friend was next to me, and he's a Villa fan. But he was next to me when I opened my phone, and he just saw it, and he saw me see it, and was just straight there. But I've never fully recovered.
I feel you. I mean, I think the thing because I was in Brussels at the time that we signed him, like still in school, and it was like none of my mates ever knew who I supported properly, because they were all kind of like, if they were supporting an English club, it was Man United or Chelsea. It was your classic kind of top six, and then if they were supporting anyone else, it was Madrid or these big clubs. And then Ruben Neves was a name that those clubs were after, and kind of made the headlines when he was youngest ever Champions League captain or whatever at Porto. And so people knew who he was. So he brought me a bit of like satisfaction of my mates knowing who I was supporting finally, and put kind of Wolves on the map. And then we kind of just became that team that signed the Portuguese players, and we didn't only have one good one, and then there was a few more. So definitely, it was sad to see him go, because it's kind of the end of that era almost.
Yeah, very much so, I think. And I think the one thing I always liked about him that sticks out to me, I mean, I playing football myself, like to play centre midfield, and I remember with all these fancy foreign names coming over, all the opposition fans saying, giving us all sorts and saying, "Oh, what happens when it gets cold?" And they're going to, can they do it on a cold Tuesday night in Stoke? And you've got this Portuguese teenager who comes in, rocks up in the Championship with short sleeves, black boots, and just bosses it. I like the fact that he embraced that challenge. That's how I saw it. And then he was all right as well, wasn't he? He had a bit. I could wax lyrical about him all day. But before I do that, I'd just like to ask you, Nathan, and the listeners, do you have a story to tell that the world needs to hear? Have you struggled with reaching new audiences who are engaged with your story? It might be time for you to start a podcast or join a podcast like Daily Wolves. let me tell you about a platform we use here at the Global Sports Podcast Network. Zencaster makes it easy to start a high-quality podcast built for growth from day one. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes ums, ahs, your nose, and 22 other speech patterns, Zencaster makes it super easy to start a podcast that sounds great. Ready to tell your story? Check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencaster. So Nathan, we're back under the spotlight.
I was going to say that was really smooth.
It's what we do. It's what we do. But yeah, how do you see the story of our season going? It's not got off to a great start, has it?
No, it hasn't. It hasn't. Obviously, I don't like losing just as much as the next person is a football fan, and I think naturally you can try and be as positive as you want to be with like the performances and how we're playing, but it does come a point where you kind of push comes to shove and you just have to start grinding out results. So I mean, listening to the previous podcast and you're talking about like, what do we need to change, and I think it is maybe what Gary O'Neill kind of alluded to in his post-match conference, like we just have to get a little bit more grit. We have to hopefully have a bit more fight about trying to grind out these results. And I do think that there will be a change in those results because I think there is quality within the squad. There are goals in there. If we can somehow find a way to stop leaking them at the other end, then I think we can be better than 3 other teams come the end of the season. So I'd predict it as like probably a lower than a 14th finish. It might be more like a 16th or 17th, but hopefully not in that bottom 3. But look, I mean, I don't want to make that prediction too early.
No. I mean, there's 2 things I want to pick up on there. First of all, I'll go with the doom and gloom of it's not great, is it, when your whole season just relies on there being 3 worse teams than you. It's not like we're gonna. Especially, it's a bit of a myth, I think, in terms of why that is with the quality that we possess. And it's something that I was asked on the recent crossover episode with Villa. And I was asked this, and at the time, I gave my answer, but now it might have changed. I want to ask you. You spoke there about O'Neill sort of giving his thoughts and talking about, trying to have a bit more fight to grind out these results, just grind them out in any way possible. Would you say that's a mental thing? Because I gave my answer to Daily Villa as no, because I was looking and thinking of players like Lamina, Mosquera, who we'll talk about later on, Cunha and Dawson, and these are players who show their character and aggression and fight on the pitch. So would you say it's a mental thing, or if not, what what do you put it down to?
I think obviously in a game of football, the mental side of it is so important. But that probably comes more as a unit rather than each player needs to do his job individually. But I think as a unit defensively, we've been poor and disorganised. I mean, that 15 minutes at Chelsea, or at home to Chelsea rather, was just an absolute shambles. And it's weird to look at a whole game and see sections of 15, 20 minutes where we're defending really well, whether that's set pieces or long balls or even, teams trying to break us down, and we actually look really, really solid defensively. And it goes from that to another 15 minutes where you can't see any of those same structures in place. So surely, from my point of view, I'd say it is something mental where, like, if the left back starts slacking and then someone, it will then pass on to someone else. And I mean, Aït-Nouri's come under a fair bit of criticism, and some of it I think is a little unfair on him, because I do think he's a quality player, and can be brilliant, and he's defended
Oh,
really well in certain games.
Without doubt, yeah.
So yeah, I don't want to single him out, but I think as a unit in general, there's times where they've just lost focus, or I'm not too sure how what to put my finger on. Really, it's quite a difficult one to pull, and I guess if I had the answer, I'd be in Gary O'Neill's shoes, maybe. But it's a tricky one, really. It's a tricky one. I'd say a mix, really.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I think there's quite a few times we've conceded a fair bit from set pieces, or goals have come from set pieces and things where we've just lacked alertness and awareness. Yeah. I think that's been a big issue for us. But just whilst we're on the topic, I suggested a switch to a back five, not because I'm necessarily in favour of that style of football, but just because, well, this current formation clearly, for whatever reason, isn't working. And the way I see it is we need to not lose games as opposed to go out and win them, at least until we start to pick up a few points, and then hopefully that mentality as a whole will shift and pick up, and like you said, it will then have the knock-on effect, but in a positive way. I just want your thoughts on that, really. What would you think? I mean, I don't think Chris hasn't given me his thoughts on this yet.
Okay.
But yeah, I just think it could be worth a shout.
Yeah, to be honest, I probably agree with you. I think if you as you said in the last episode, if you concede 14 goals in, to be honest, I don't even know what amount of games would be respectable to concede 14 goals in. I think Chelsea only conceded, was it 15 in the whole blooming season? I don't know how.
Yeah.
How they. Anyway, let's talk about I think the back five idea would probably work. I think you've got centre halves that aren't as comfortable on the ball in Totti and Bueno. I mean, although Bueno I think looked all right against Brighton, to be fair to him on the ball, I don't think that's maybe a.
Sorry, I'm gonna just pause you there again, Nathan. This is something you'll pick up as part of your time here at Daily Wolves. I've become, without even meaning to become, but I'm sort of the poster boy of the Santiago Bueno fan club. Okay. So the more praise you give him, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Well, I was going to go on and praise him. Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I'm probably part of that fan club too. I think he's got huge potential, and he might not have been given as many opportunities as I was actually expecting based off of the performances he's given us. I think he's looked more assured on the ball, definitely, than Totti has, and at times looked more reliable defensively off the back of that as well than Totti has. But I think Totti might have been given more opportunities. Now, I don't know what that looks like numbers wise on the amount of fixtures and minutes they've played, but definitely that back five idea with Totti on the left and Dawson in the middle and Bueno on the right would potentially shore things up. And then you've got three central defensive midfielders really in front of them, and that, I mean, at that point you'd surely you can't concede 3 goals with that many defensive minded and good, that those three screening that back five. You'd think that they'd be fairly comfortable sitting in and thinking, giving the onus to the opposition and just say, look, try and break us down. We're solid here. But again,
I think it might have to be the way that we go. I know a lot has been said about the defense, the midfield, being too defensive. But again, I keep telling people, like you've just said there, conceded 14 goals this season.
Already.
It needs to be defensive. The one thing I would say, just based off that, is something I was going to come on to later on, but it lines up nicely for us now. First of all, obviously, Totti is currently out with a supposedly minor injury.
Of course,
So, like I said, if he's him and Bueno are both fit, I think that back three has to shore us up defensively.
Yeah.
And for the listeners, if you don't already know by now, it's been confirmed that Yerson Mosquera has suffered a serious injury to his knee, damaging both his MCL and his ACL, and is going to be out for a serious amount of time. So obviously, absolutely gutted for him, but it's something that could really damage our season.
Yeah,
because I think
definitely.
he looks like our best defender at times. I don't know about you.
He has. Yeah, I think he's had a really positive start, and he's been a bright spark in some otherwise miserable defensive displays. I mean, he's looked quick, strong, confident, and for someone who's come from or not had any previous Premier League experience before this season to kind of just be thrown in at the deep end at the highest level and play the way he has done is really impressive. So fingers crossed he comes back to the same level. Wish him a speedy recovery, really.
I think the issue is, I mean, like you said, it's not just that notion of hopefully it doesn't affect him going forwards in the future too badly and he's able to recover from it. But it's going to be a long while with him out for us. And I think that's something people really need to realise is, just how much that's going to cost us. Especially, when you look at, we've just sold a centre-half for 40 million and got an 18-year-old kid from France in who's not going to be the immediate replacement, and that's it. It's really something that's it's gonna damage our season, and I'm hoping it doesn't affect us too badly, but if it does, the listeners will be able to hear all about it here at Daily Wolves. And this podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network, every club, every day. See how that just seamlessly...
It just flows.
Yeah. But yeah, I mentioned there, Nathan, the lack of investment in a centre half, and that leads me nicely on to one of the other questions that I had for you, which was more of a general one in terms of what are your thoughts on Fosun? From top to bottom.
Top to bottom, I think when they initially came in, it was a bit of a circus, really, with their appointments and what was going on. I mean, I remember Walter Zenga and his press conferences.
We're massive in Italy.
Yeah, I mean, that was feels like a bit of a fever dream now. But I think I guess at this point in time, they've had some success. The first two seasons back in the Prem were brilliant for us. And I think we sometimes underestimate how good and well organised we were, and in managing to do, finish seventh twice in 3 seasons is unbelievable for a club that was, less than 3 years ago in the Championship. So to be able to build on that and have all that success, I think Fosun might have, I don't know if they kind of took things for granted or thought that things were just going to continue that way. But obviously, with how competitive the Prem is, we made some appointments that weren't successful. Nuno kind of left at a time where his stock stayed fairly high so that he was able to go to a top 6 club, and then they're hoping to bring in players and managers that were going to bring us back to that level of consistent success. But I think at this point, it seems from the outside looking in that they've kind of decided to not cash in, but they're trying to balance the books and be as cost efficient as possible. And it's really frustrating to see that, given how it initially started off, where they were prepared to spend big bucks in the Championship and prepared to put all this back in behind. I mean, at the time, Nuno really was the person that they fully went all in on. But I mean, if you look at projects around the Prem and other teams that are doing well and on upwards trajectories, they're always fully backed by or almost always fully backed by their owners. And it feels as though Gary O'Neill is on a bit of a, I think I saw Simon Jordan. I mean, I don't agree with everything he says, but I remember him or seeing in the news that he said something, he feels sorry for Gary O'Neill and the position that he's in. And I do kind of echo that feeling a little bit. In the sense that he, it can't have been Gary O'Neill's decision to not bring in another centre half.
No.
If we can figure it out, Gary O'Neill can figure it out, sort of thing. I mean, if you get rid of arguably your two best players, you're going to be alarm bells are going to be ringing, and you're going to be going, right, the top priority here is to bring in someone stable at centre half who's got some experience, and that's obviously not happened. So you'd imagine that's where there's a breakdown is probably further up the chain than Gary O'Neill. So I know I've kind of gone slightly off topic of the Fosu thing, but I think it might come down to them. I don't know how much Matt Hobbs would have had an influence on not bringing in a centre half. I don't know if he's kind of that middleman between Fosun and O'Neill, or if he's fully with Gary O'Neill on these things. It's hard to tell from the outside looking in, because the comms we get is kind of like, we're always doing our best to make these strategic decisions that are financially going to keep the books all right. But as a Wolves fan, and if you see Andre come in for the money he's come in for, and then the Carlos Forbes and Rodrigo Gomez, it's great. It's great to have those players in those positions. But you'd probably want that and an established centre half. Then you'd probably go, that's actually a really decent window. But because we haven't brought in that main one at centre half, we're going, actually, it's a bit of a dodgy window.
No, 100%, and especially with the Mosquera injury, and then as well, like we said, Totti being out, we only have two fit senior, first team current centre halves. Two, that's it, and we want to play three. So and one of which is 34 or however old Dawson is. And what I think makes that even crazier is the fact that we have 4 first team goalkeepers for no sort of apparent reason. And there's just, I'd love to know what's gone on in recent years to see the drop off and the change, because it's not just what we see on the pitch. I think the big thing from it is, like you said, the communication coming out of the club or coming out from Fosun around the ongoings. And I do just, like you said, if we had the answers to that, we wouldn't be sat here discussing it now. But it's crazy to think of where we were to where we are now, and how different not only things look, but how things feel as well around the club.
100%. I think there's been some weird decisions going on, and I go between. We were saying before we went live, like, I go between thinking, I remember us being in League One, and feeling like we were on top of the world after beating Rotherham at home, and then you go from that to 7th twice in a few seasons, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, is that the new norm? Should we expect to be challenging for Europe every season? And then you drop down to where we are, or where we feel we are at the minute as a club, and it's just, I guess it's just the life of a Wolves fan, really. But it's a tough one to get your head around when it's under that same ownership that was getting us that 7th place. So are we wrong to want to expect it? I don't know.
I think my answer to that, short and simply, is no, because of course you can be grateful for coming from League One and so on and so forth to where we are now, But at the same time, it's not mutually exclusive, in my opinion. I know a lot of people use that as a counter argument and so on when we have the Fosun debate and things like that. But you can't. The way the fans and even the players, I feel sorry for both the players and the managers who we've seen both come and go, or O'Neill now in recent years. The way they've just, by the looks of it, just been lied to, just outright lied to about the project and the trajectory of the club. I don't think anyone can criticize a fan for criticizing that. Is my point. But yeah, we'll try and finish up the episode on a slightly higher note.
Okay.
As I've said that, I've tried to think of things about the club currently that are positive. I just want to get your thoughts on a higher note of the weekend's fixture being Liverpool at home.
I mean, we've done all right against them in the past. Our performances. It feels like have always been pretty good against Liverpool, especially when we've been at home. And there's always great TikToks when we play Liverpool at home. There's always a great highlights reel and good goals and stuff. I mean, the Jimenez header comes to mind, but like,
did that come up on your TikTok earlier today?
It did, yeah, and it got me buzzing again.
It came up on mine, yeah.
So I mean, I do think there are some positives to be had, and if we obviously drew or beat Villa, we'd be speaking in a different light. But yeah, it's a results based in industry, as they call it, and I mean, look, if Cunha sings "Hi at Wolverhampton" at start again, then surely we beat Liverpool. That's my logic.
Yep, and you know what? That's a prediction and some logic that I'm not going to fault or disagree with. I'm just going to stick with it for today's episode. But yeah, Nathan, overall, it's been great to have you. Welcome to the team. And
thank you very much.
Yeah, guys, we'll be back again tomorrow, and then again Friday, and next week, and the rest of the season. And we hope that our results pick up as we go along. But yeah, thank you for listening, and we'll speak to you again tomorrow.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.